Hey guys, it's Sylvia from Backyard Brushes in Fountain City, Wisconsin. And in today's video, it's all about 3 cheap thrift flips, that's hard to say, that I'm using to participate in a 40/40 challenge with Sonnet's membership group. 40 days to flip $40 worth of items. And all 3 of these projects, I made mistakes and I learned a few lessons. Hopefully, I can pass my lessons on to you. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's get creating. For project 1, I picked up this little framed mirror from our local Goodwill. It was only $2.99. And this should have been a really quick and easy thrift flip. However, it wasn't for me, and I learned a few things along the way. So first things first, I did take the mirror out of the frame and I gave it a really good cleaning. Using IOD white ink, I juiced up my new stamp, and yes, this is the first time I used it, and I have been dying for years for them to come out with a musical stamp that's similar to the Kindest Regards stamp. So needless to say, I was kind of excited. So I inked up my stamp and I laid the stamp on top of the mirror and just made sure to press down firmly. And then I removed the stamp from the mirror. I was satisfied with how the print turns out, so I just set the mirror aside and I let it dry overnight. I chose Highlander by Fusion Mineral Paint, and I gave the frame a coat of paint, and it only took 1 coat, and I did the front and back. I chose Dark Wax by DIY, and I just dappled or stifled all over the whole frame with the wax. And I just made sure I got in all the creases and crevices of the frame. Fusion Mineral Paint does not need to be sealed, so I chose to use the wax, not primarily as a sealer, but because I like the detailed look it gives. So once I had the wax on, I just used a paper towel and I wiped off all that extra wax, leaving all the detailed from the wax in the crevices and the creases. I selected a simple bird transfer from the 2025 summer release of IOD. I think it's from Menagerie. I'm not even sure how to say it. And I just kind of, moved the transfer around the mirror to see, where I liked it, and decided to place it down. And I just used the tool that comes with the transfers. Each transfer book comes with a new tool, so after a while you might have a stockpile of them. And I just gently rubbed all the way around the transfer, and I peeled it back, starting, I believe, from like the side corner. And I just rubbed and peeled as I went. And since the ink had dried overnight, it wasn't a problem. I didn't have to seal it first. And the transfer went on actually really smooth and easy. I just took my time and practiced my patience and rubbed and peeled. And when I was done, I just took the back of that transfer paper and I rubbed over the transfer, making sure that I sealed it and it was adhered to the mirror. And then I just framed the mirror real quickly to see what it looked like when it would be all put together. And I liked it, so I decided not to do like a faux effect around the edges of the mirror. I just didn't think there'd be enough room. And this is where things start to go wrong. I chose Big Top by IOD to seal my transfer. It's a clear coat, and as I'm applying it to the transfer, the ink starts to dissipate and I lose the majority of my musical notes that are underneath the transfer. I am not sure why. I don't know if it's because I didn't treat the mirror first. So if you're an IOD or you have more experience in this area than I do, let me know why my ink dissipated. I'm wondering, well, afterwards I discovered my IOD white ink is called white mixing ink. So I did order a new ink, chalk white. So is it because I used the mixing ink, or is it because I should have sealed the mirror first? I don't know. So please let me know. Is it because it's glass? I don't know. So now I'm like, what do I do? And I talked it over a little bit with Natalie from Sparks of Joy. And I decided to cut a mask out of the transfer paper. Using the back of the transfer, I just set it over the birds, traced around it with a pencil, cut it out with my scissors, placed it on top of the birds, juiced up my stamp again with my white mixing ink, and restamped the mirror. Did it come out perfect? No, but it did look a lot better than what it did after all the ink came off. So I reframed it, and then I discovered the eye hook is, on the diagonal. So I should have made my picture diagonal versus horizontal. I'll add another hook before I put it up for sale. For project 2, I'm using this wood step stool I picked up at our local restore, and I only paid $5 for it. I was super stoked to find one for less than $10 and no paint on it. I used petroleum jelly and I painted the metal around the edges so that if I got paint on it, it would easily wipe off. I chose Apothecary by DIY, and I painted the ladder with 2 coats, except for the steps. I chose Ironstone by Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. It's a beautiful neutral color, and I just mixed 1 scoop of the powder to 1 scoop of warm water. You can just you mix up how much you feel you're going to need, and you can always mix up more. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. If you don't use all your paint, I have learned you can store it for up to 2 weeks in a glass container in the fridge, but it really does have milk in it, which is why you have to store it for only about 2 weeks in the fridge. And then you just mix it up, let it sit, it'll thicken up a little bit, and it's ready to be used. So after sitting, I just grabbed the paint, stirred it up a little more, and I painted the steps of the ladder, and I did use 2 coats of the milk paint. And I did have to mix up a second batch after the first coats were applied. Also, I'm not worried about little lumps that you might find in the paint, as when you sand it or you go back over it once it dries, the little lumps brush out easily, but I think we learn as we paint, to smooth it out. So it is a lesson to learn to ignore those little lumps. While the second coat is still wet, I misted a piece of IOD inlay, and ink side down, I placed it on the top rung of the step. I used my fingers to smooth it out, and once I got it laid down where I wanted it and I felt it was smoothed enough, I grabbed a baby wipe and I just gently pressed it down, pressing the paint from the inlay onto the wet paint on the stool. Then I have to practice my patience and make sure it completely dries before I remove the inlay. And here's error number 1. I was excited, my paint inlay has completely dried, and I go to peel it up. And I'm like, I know it peels up easier than this. Why am I having problems? And I just can't get my inlay to peel. It's sticking to the stool, it's starting to rip. And I'm like, okay, I know I did something wrong because it should peel off really easily. So I went back, I looked at my directions, and yeah, I'm supposed to wet it before I peel it. So I lay the inlay back down the best that I can. I grab a mister, I mist it, and then I go back with a wet baby wipe and I press down into the inlay. I know people don't like to use the word moist, but making sure the inlay is nice and damp, and then I can peel it off. And I'm a little nervous and I keep wiping it. So I'm just going to grab that other corner of the inlay. I just can't stop rubbing it. And I'm just going to peel it off. Or mist it some more. I don't know. At this point, I'm having a kind of, a small panic attack since I didn't follow the directions. So remember, moisturize or mist your inlay before peeling it off. So then I just grab the corner and it peels off a lot easier than before. And seriously, it's a lot more simple than I made it look like. And it's almost magical when you peel back that inlay and that design is like right there in the paint. And I used milk paint, so I did get a little chippiness underneath the paint inlay. And that's okay because I was going for a vintage look. And usually you can reuse your paint inlays, but because this one came off in some different pieces, I don't plan on reusing this one. Using my finger sander, I just went around and I just softly distressed the edges and a little bit on top of the stool, the inlay, to kind of blend it in and give it that worn look. So moving down the rungs of the ladder, I did remember to mist this one first. So I just took the misting bottle, gave it a really good spray. I used a baby wipe, pressed down, and it also removes some of that extra water you might have on your inlay. So I just press down, and then I get to do the peel, and it goes much better this time around versus the first time. So just remember, after it dries thoroughly, make sure you mist it before you peel off the inlay. It works so much easier, people. And then I just follow the same processes with the bottom rung of the ladder. And there's also a small, a small backing, a small board going across the back of the ladder. I also put an inlay on there. So when you're looking at the ladder, you can also see the paint inlay in the background on that back board. I just thought it was a nice little extra effect. I added more paint to a couple areas on the ladder, and I grabbed different pieces of the rose inlays, and I added extra roses in around 3 different areas of the ladder. Now, again, Sylvia's not paying attention to what she's doing, so I'm applying the inlay, and then I realize I had the paint side up. Yep, I did. So I removed it and remisted the inlay, placed it back down, paint side down, grid side up, and I let it dry thoroughly. I then used a baby wipe to clean off all the excess Vaseline on the metal. I used the finger sander to randomly sand around the edges of the ladder. Here you can see where I have one of the paint inlays of the roses. It's little rosebuds on the side of the stepladder. I kind of sand around it. I have a little bit of the panty lines going. And with the paint inlay, I guess it's because the paint is darker, it's just not as bright, even though it was the first time using that inlay. I decided to use Sweet Pickens dark oil wax, and I go around the whole project covering it in this oil wax. Lesson learned: do this in a well-ventilated area. I think this room smelled of the wax for like a week. I did have to open the windows because the fumes did get a little strong. I've never done a project this large or this big using the oil wax. I've only used it a couple times. So learn from me. If you're using the oil wax, make sure you have a ventilated area because the odor does get pretty strong. Applying all the wax, I let it sit 10 to 20 minutes. Then I came back with a cloth and I wiped off all that extra oil from the ladder. I liked the distressed look of the ladder. However, when it came to the dark wax with the paint inlays, it was difficult to see the painted inlays on the side of the ladder that were on top of the green. I think in the future, I would probably use a clear wax or maybe a wax instead of the dark oil. It was difficult to control the absorption. I don't know if that's correct, but you can barely see the bud. Project 3 is a rusty, crusty metal container I paid 50 cents for at our local store. It's a benzomatic, so I'm guessing it's a metal case that carried a small torch. I cleaned it with vinegar and water, and I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum to stop the corrosion. My first mistake here was I chose the new paint White Oak by Fusion in their Alchemy collection. After 4 coats and I was still getting bleed through, I chose to use DIY crinoline and gave it its 5th coat of paint. And guess what? No more bleed through. So I will not use the Alchemy paint again when I am painting on metal. For the outside of the box, I chose good old 57 by DIY. and it took just 2 coats of paint. I cut out some IOD transfers. They're from the 2025 release, spring release, Lost Garden. And I just cut them up randomly and placed them around the metal container, the metal box. Before applying the transfers, I decided to try the white ink again on the metal box. So I just randomly stamped, and I don't even know which stamp this is, but I just randomly stamped all over the metal box, again using the white mixing ink from IOD. And you could see it, but it was really, really light, but I felt it would still give a nice layered, textured background. I then started to apply the transfers randomly around the box, and I did not seal the ink or the box, the DIY paint. I just layered my transfer right on top and rubbed it down with the tool they applied, and it adhered really easily. I had 0 issues applying the transfers. And you can even see here, you can't even see where I put ink down on this metal container. After finishing all the transfers, I chose Big Top by IOD to seal the metal box. And as I started to apply the Big Top over the paint and the transfers, the ink started to reappear, and I could see the stamping underneath the transfers more than I could before I applied the Big Top. So with the white mixing ink, the ink reappeared with Big Top on the metal box and disappeared on glass with the Big Top. I also chose to add a transfer inside the box. So, which project was your favorite? Even with all the mistakes I made throughout the projects, I'd love to hear. And if you found this video inspirational, please hit subscribe below and follow me along on my creative journey. Thank you.